This segment is sponsored by GBMC Healthcare.
Okay, so a lot of news and information has recently come out about COVID vaccines and possible booster shots. To help us break this all down is infection control practitioner Molly Hyde. Welcome to the show, Molly.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so can you tell us now, the Pfizer vaccine has received FDA approval. What does the FDA know now that they did not know in late 2020?
Yeah, so the initial stages for authorization versus approval is about the same. So in order to get authorization, you still have to go through the appropriate clinical trials and submit safety and efficacy data. What they have now is just more data. So in order to get full approval, you need at least 6 months of clinical trial data versus 2 for authorization. And then when they look to grant full approval, they're also looking at all of the data that came from the vaccines that were given under the EUA. So they just have this huge data set that they're looking at when they take approval into consideration.
Okay, now is the Pfizer vaccine FDA approved for everyone now? Can you clarify this for us?
Yeah, so that it is a little bit confusing. So the Pfizer vaccine is fully approved for people ages 16 and up. It can still be given under emergency use authorization for people aged 12 to 15. It cannot be given for anyone under the age of 12. And the reason for that difference between the, say, 15-year-old and the 16-year-old is because the clinical trials for 12 to 15-year-olds started later, and so they still need to get the appropriate data before they can submit for full approval.
Okay, so how is this going to affect a booster shot for COVID?
So it probably won't affect a booster shot. It could, because it could allow doctors to give a booster off-label. And so what that means is they could give the shot outside the scope of what it's intended for without FDA authorization. But most doctors are not going to do that. That's not something that's typically generally done for vaccines. And so for the most part, it won't likely affect boosters. For the most part, you will have to wait until FDA authorization before you can get your booster.
Good to know. So is there scientific evidence that shows vaccinated people need a booster? And is there still scientific debate about the immediate need for these booster shots?
Yes, so there's definitely still some debate about when we need a booster, although there is a growing body of evidence that shows that boosters will be beneficial. So most of this evidence is coming out of Israel, where they use the Pfizer vaccine. And what they found was not only is your immunity waning, but they also found that giving a booster will reduce your risk of COVID by 11-fold. And so we are seeing that a booster may be, or is most likely going to be needed. But there is still questions on timing and still questions on who should be getting the booster.
Right.
Should we be focusing now on people who have only gotten who haven't gotten vaccines at all? Should we be working towards getting them vaccinated, or should we be working towards getting the booster for high-risk people? And hopefully all of these questions are going to be answered when the FDA Advisory Committee meets on the 17th.
Got you. Okay, that's a lot of great info, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.